They say life comes at you fast. Mine showed up in a window seat with a boarding pass to paradise and a carry-on full of lies. The trip was supposed to be a celebration, our 5th anniversary. I'd booked the flights months in advance. Bali, sand, sea, sunrise yoga for her, and a cold drink with a little umbrella in it for me. It was perfect. Too perfect, in hindsight. Her name was Lena, my wife. She had that kind of voice that could hush a room or break your heart, depending on which version of her you were dealing with. And back then, I still believed in the first version. 2 nights before our flight, she coughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a soft, calculated sound into her sleeve as we sat on the couch watching a rerun of The Office. "Think I'm coming down with something," she said. Her voice carried that subtle kind of concern that made you feel guilty just for booking a vacation during cold season. "You want to reschedule?" I asked, already knowing she'd say no. No, she said, shaking her head. "You go? You've been working like crazy. I'd just slow you down." And I bought it, like a chump with a coupon. So I flew alone, took the window seat, watched the clouds pass by, and convinced myself this would still be a good trip, even without her. Even when the guy next to me asked, "Traveling solo?" and I muttered, "Wife's sick," I didn't feel suspicious. Not yet. First day, I texted her pictures of the villa. No response. Second day, a single "looks amazing" with a heart emoji. The kind of message you send your dentist after they fix your crown, not your husband on a dream vacation. Third day, silence. Then, a message from my buddy Darren. "Dude, isn't this your wife?" Attached, a photo. Blurry, but unmistakable. Lena, hair in a bun. Laughing. Beachside. Holding a drink. Umbrella and all. Caption, "Vibes palm tree sun #freedom weekend." It wasn't posted on her page. Of course not. It was on some guy's story. I didn't recognize him at first, but my gut did. The kind of recognition that lives in the bones. That was the moment the clouds parted. Not in the poetic sense. Literally. I was staring out the villa's window when the rain stopped and the beach came into view. And suddenly, every doubt I'd shelved for months walked right back in like it still had a key. The late nights at work. The gym sessions she never came back sweaty from. The new swimsuit she bought, just in case we extended the trip. Sick, huh? Sure. Sick of me. And that was just the start. So there I was, half a world away, staring at a stranger's Instagram story like it was a crime scene photo. And in a way, it was. You ever have one of those moments where time doesn't slow down? It just stops altogether? That was me, frozen, holding my phone like it had personally betrayed me. My wife was supposed to be wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea, watching bad reality shows. Instead, she was wrapped in some dude's arms under a beach umbrella, living her freedom weekend. The guy? His name was Trey. I recognized him eventually. Used to be one of those background characters in our lives. The guy from her old Pilates class who just happened to run into her more often than statistically reasonable. I didn't like him. Lena said that was just my jealousy talking. Turns out, jealousy sounds a lot like instinct with a megaphone. I clicked through more stories. There they were, clinking glasses. Her hand on his chest. A boomerang of them dancing on the sand under tiki torches, captioned, "My twin flame face blowing a kiss fire." Twin flame? That's rich. I was still carrying the lighter. I didn't even feel angry yet. Just stupid. Like I'd bought stock in a company that had already filed for bankruptcy. Like I'd RSVP'd to a wedding and showed up on the wrong day. And worst of all, I still missed her. Pathetic, right? I thought about calling her, asking where she was, pretending I didn't already know. But something in me held back. I wasn't ready for her lies. I wanted the truth, straight. No garnish. So I texted Darren back instead. "Where'd you find that post?" He sent me the guy's profile, Trey_moves. Of course. The kind of guy who calls himself Moves because he does CrossFit and owns 3 unbuttoned shirts. His page was private, but his friends weren't. One of them had tagged him at a resort just 2 miles down the coast from my villa. That's when I felt it, that cold burn in my chest. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Something worse. Purpose. So I rented a bike. Told the concierge I wanted to explore the coastline. Tossed on a pair of sunglasses and rode along the beach like I was starring in the world's most emotionally repressed travel commercial. All I could hear was the sound of tires on sand and the echo of her voice saying, "I just need a weekend to rest." I found the resort. It was obnoxiously beautiful. Infinity pools, glowing cabanas, and music that made you want to throw your morals into the ocean. I sat at a bar just off the beach, ordered something with coconut in it, and waited. And sure enough, there she was, wearing the same sundress she claimed was too summery for our anniversary dinner, laughing, tossing her head back, sitting across from Trey, who was shirtless, of course, like every cliché that ever betrayed a man with a mortgage. They toasted. She leaned in and kissed him soft, familiar, like she'd done it 1,000. And that was when I finally got angry. Not because she kissed him, but because she looked happy. Because for the first time in months, I saw her smile the way she used to, and it wasn't mine anymore. You ever feel your heart drop? Not like it's broken, but like it's just packed its things and left the building? That was me, sitting at the bar with coconut foam on my upper lip and a front row seat to the destruction of my marriage. And not even the good kind of destruction. No explosions, no tearful confessions. Just quiet, easy, sunlit betrayal. She looked comfortable. Not caught. Not guilty. Lena smiled at Trey the way she used to smile at me, back when we still had inside jokes and I hadn't turned into background noise in my own home. So I took out my phone. One photo, then another. A short video of them holding hands as they walked across the deck. I wasn't documenting it for court. No, this wasn't about legal leverage. This was about clarity. About not letting her worm her way out of this with phrases like, "You're imagining things," or "He's just a friend." I wanted facts. Evidence. Reality. Pixel by pixel. I watched her for another 10 minutes. Not like a creep. Like a man staring at the crash site of a plane he built by hand. And when I'd had enough, I got on the bike and pedaled back to the villa. The wind was stronger now. It didn't cool me off. When I got back, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I did what I always do when life falls apart. I made a spreadsheet. Call it a coping mechanism. Call it the illusion of control. But I opened my laptop, created a folder called Proof and Pretending, and started dragging in every screenshot I'd saved over the last few months. The ones I'd ignored. The ones I told myself were nothing. The late-night texts from work. The tagged photos she untagged herself from. The emails that always seemed to pop up from names like T, Morris, and T-Man. I pulled our flight reservation. My name and hers, side by side. I clicked cancel on her ticket. Felt good. Then I opened WhatsApp and typed, "Hey, caught a second wind. Feeling better. You up for a video call?" It was bait, of course. I wanted to see what lies she'd try to feed me when she thought I was still halfway across the island. She replied 5 minutes later. "Ugh, babe, I look like death. Can we do tomorrow? I'm just in bed watching Netflix and drinking tea, lol." She added a sad face emoji. Classic. And that was it. That was the moment it all crystallized. Not the photo, not the kiss, not the laugh. The LOL. She wasn't remorseful. She was comfortable. Lying wasn't an act for her. It was the baseline. And I realized something that burned hotter than betrayal. She didn't think I'd ever find out. She thought I was the kind of man who'd never check, never question, never notice. Just quietly swallow it all down and keep paying the phone bill while she FaceTimed her boyfriend from the same bed we used to share. I sat there for a long time after that. Not hurt. Not anymore. Just sharp. Like a blade being pulled from its sheath. She thought the story was over. That she had written the last chapter. She was wrong. I still had the pin. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was hurt. That phase had passed like a fever. What I felt now was cleaner. Colder. Like someone had wiped the fog off the mirror and I was finally staring at the truth. And the truth? It didn't need comforting. It needed planning. You see, up until that day, I thought I was the loyal husband, the stick-it-out guy. The fool, really. But sitting in that villa, surrounded by silence and seashell decor, I realized something. I'd never been the fool. She'd just been very good at acting. And now? The show was over. I started small. Logged into our shared bank account and rerouted a few things. Froze the card she used for errands, the one with the Sephora charges and late-night food deliveries that magically appeared on days I remembered eating alone. Then, I checked her email. She used the same password for everything, because Lena was smart in all the ways that didn't involve operational security. A couple of clicks and I was inside. And what I found wasn't surprising. Confirmations from resorts, Uber receipts, restaurant reservations for two. All during her so-called sick days. But one detail stood out. They weren't checking out until Saturday. That meant I had time. And more importantly, leverage. The next morning, I packed up my things, left the villa key on the dresser, and called a cab. Not to the airport. To their resort. I checked in under my middle name, Davis. Got a room on the same floor. Wore sunglasses and a ball cap like a tourist in hiding. Which, technically, I was. Then I spent the next few hours making friends with the staff. See, people underestimate how much you can learn with a good tip and a friendly smile. By lunch, I knew what room they were in. By dinner, I knew what time they usually came down to the beach. And by sunset, I was sitting under a palm tree with a book I wasn't reading, watching them from behind tinted lenses. They weren't careful. That was their mistake. Lena wore her deceit like jewelry, flashing it in the sun, confident it would never be noticed. She laughed at his jokes, ran her fingers through his hair, even kissed him between sips of whatever overpriced cocktail she'd traded our marriage for. And that's when the idea hit me. Revenge didn't need to be violent or loud. It needed to be memorable. That night, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and made 3 calls. First, to my lawyer. He owed me a favor. Second, to our building's management back home. I told them Lena would no longer be authorized to enter the apartment. Lock access revoked, effective immediately. And third, to my cousin Miles. Now, Miles is the kind of guy you don't involve unless you're serious. He's not shady. He's just thorough. Runs a private investigations business in Nevada, mostly for bored housewives and paranoid executives. But once in a while, he handles something personal. Need something handled, Logan? He asked, voice casual. Yeah, I said. I need eyes on my wife. And I need you to find out everything about the guy she's with. Credit score, job history, social security if you can swing it. You want him disappeared or embarrassed? I smiled. Embarrassed. Thoroughly. Copy that. I hung up and leaned back against the headboard, letting the ceiling fan whir above me like a war drum. The next day, I followed them. Not in a creepy way. I kept my distance. Just enough to confirm their routine. Morning swim. Midday drinks. Afternoon nap. If you could call what they were doing in that room a nap. And by 6 p.m., they were dressed and glowing for dinner. Perfect. I waited until they left. Then I slipped a note under their door. To Trey. I'm the husband. You're the sequel. Enjoy your final night. Because tomorrow, you find out how this story ends. Warmest regards. L. Petty? Maybe. But poetic. I wanted the seed planted. I wanted his next glass of champagne to taste like anxiety. And just like that, I vanished. Back to my villa, just for the night. I sat on the balcony, watching the stars. Not broken. Not even bitter. Just ready. The next morning, I boarded the earliest flight home. While they were still sleeping off their sin under 1,000 thread count sheets, I was 10,000 feet above them, filing digital paperwork with my lawyer. Contesting her half of the estate? Done. Freezing joint investments? Done. Changing passwords, PINs, security questions? All done. By the time Lena landed 2 days later, suntanned and clueless, the locks had changed, the bank had flagged her card, and her login attempts were met with access denied. She texted me, Logan, why isn't my key working? I didn't respond. She called. I let it ring. She sent another message. Are you home? What's going on? This isn't funny. Oh, sweetheart. This wasn't funny. This was closure. The funny thing about betrayal is it doesn't just hurt. It echoes. Long after the moment passes, it rattles around in your chest, waiting for silence so it can whisper again. Remember? Yeah, she did that. By the time Lena touched down back home, I was already 3 steps ahead and 2 emotions behind. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was cataloging, strategizing, turning pain into blueprints. She arrived at the apartment with a tan and an attitude, dragging her suitcase behind her like she was returning from a wellness retreat instead of a 2-man vacation. I watched it unfold from a distance, literally. Building management had installed a new camera outside our door the week before. Right on time. She walked up, swiped her key card, and red light. She tried again. Same result. Then she knocked. Then she pounded. Finally, her voice, sharp, high-pitched, that familiar mix of confusion and entitlement, cut through the mic. Logan, what the hell? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because I had plenty, and I wanted her to feel the weight of waiting for it. She called. Voicemail. She texted. What are you doing? Open the door. Then, are you seriously freezing me out right now? Then the crown jewel. I can explain. Oh, I bet you can, sweetheart. I bet you've been rehearsing it for weeks, while Trey rubbed your shoulders and fed you lies about finding your truth. I waited 15 minutes before replying, not with a message, but with a notification. She received an email, subject line, "Your account has been closed." Inside? The joint checking account she'd been siphoning from for months, now empty. All of it transferred to a new account in my name only, with documentation of every withdrawal she'd made labeled neatly, "Unauthorized use under false pretenses." My lawyer called it protective repositioning. I called it fair. She didn't take it well. She called again. 5 times. I let it ring, then sent her a voice note. Just one sentence. "Check your luggage." That was it. Because before I left the villa, I took a little stroll through her suitcase while she was out enjoying mojitos and moral failure. And in that suitcase, nestled among swimsuits and sundresses, I found her journal. The same one she claimed she never used anymore because real reflection happens off the page. Lena, like most liars, had an ego. And like most egos, it couldn't resist documentation. She'd written it all down. Every detail. Nicknames, dates, even comparisons. Pages of thoughts about how Trey made her feel young again and seen. How she'd felt suffocated in our routine. My favorite line? "Logan means well, but he doesn't ignite anything in me anymore." Not even a spark? Well, we'd see about that. I took photos of every page. Then I slipped a printed copy into her bag, highlighted, annotated, and paired with a little note of my own. "Don't worry, I read it all." I even corrected the grammar. I knew she'd find it when she got home. Knew she'd open her suitcase expecting to unpack her sins like souvenirs. Instead, she'd find the mirror I held up to her soul polished and waiting. The next day, I returned to the apartment to grab the last of my things. She wasn't there. Of course not. She was probably still trying to get a new credit card, figure out where I'd redirected the utilities, or text her mother for moral backup. Spoiler, I'd already called her mother. Told her everything. Even forwarded a few of Lena's literary masterpieces from the journal. Her reply? One word. Figures. I walked through our home like I was touring a museum of what used to matter. The couch where we once fell asleep watching old movies. The framed photo from that trip to Big Sur. Her smile reel back then. Maybe. Hard to tell now. Even the smell of the place was different, like she'd lit candles to mask the guilt, but it never quite burned away. I left her one last thing. On the kitchen counter, next to her favorite mug, the one I bought her on our honeymoon that said, "Good morning, gorgeous," I placed the ring. Not mine. Hers. Alongside it? A letter. "Lena, since you like writing things down, here's my version. You lied. You cheated. You pretended to be sick so you could tan your guilt next to a guy who probably thinks emotional depth is measured by the size of his protein shake. You called it freedom. You called it self-discovery. I call it cowardice with a cocktail umbrella. You say I didn't ignite you anymore? Well, you lit a fire, all right. And it burned away the last piece of me that ever wanted to hold on to someone who sees loyalty as limitation. Don't worry about me. You lost a man who would have walked through fire for you. I lost a woman who wouldn't even call when she got to the beach. I'll take that trade. Logan." I locked the door behind me one last time. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Just with the kind of silence that says, I saw everything, and I'm still standing. You know how some people walk through life thinking they're bulletproof? Untouchable? Like the universe wrote them a permission slip to dance on other people's dignity? That was Trey. The man strutted through my marriage like it was a vacation rental. Wore my wife's time like a borrowed watch, something shiny, temporary, and never truly his. He thought he could sip stolen champagne and leave with the bottle. But I don't believe in passive closure. I believe in consequences. And Trey was about to meet his. While Lena unpacked her excuses, I had my cousin Miles, remember, the guy who treats digital footprints like treasure maps, dig deep into our muscle shirt Casanova. And let me tell you, Trey wasn't just a walking cliché. He was a walking liability. Turns out, Mr. Twin Flame had a past stickier than a July windshield. 2 counts of tax evasion. 1 lawsuit pending over unpaid rent. A failed personal training business that he tried to rebrand as lifestyle consulting. And my personal favorite, he had a bad habit of dating women with stable incomes, moving in, and bleeding them dry before vanishing like a motivational speaker in an MLM scandal. Classic Trey. But this time, he picked the wrong house to break into. Because while Lena was busy playing beach goddess, she signed a few things without reading them. Like the condo lease extension and the car title transfer. She never asked why I suddenly cared so much about shared assets. That new Jeep she loved driving around in? Now in her name, along with the overdue parking tickets, the failed emissions test, and the ballooning insurance bill I had quietly stopped paying. Oops. Now back to Trey. With Miles feeding me the intel, I started my own little campaign. Not loud, not messy, just precise. Surgical. First, I contacted the gym where Trey had been trying to pitch his exclusive training program. Apparently, he had applied for a job there using a fake reference. I kindly forwarded the HR manager a copy of the court record from his previous fraud case, attached with a subject line that read, "For your due diligence." Then, I found his public Venmo, a goldmine of oversharing. Payment notes like, "For protein powder flexed biceps. Massage, thanks babe. Hotel, Thursday night fire. I screenshotted everything and sent it to a few of Lena's mutual friends. I didn't have to explain anything. The emojis did all the heavy lifting. But the masterpiece? That was still coming. Trey ran a tiny YouTube channel. Nothing big. A few thousand followers. Mostly workout clips, bland self-help speeches, and shirtless rants about grind set mentality. One night, he went live. Standing in some rented kitchen, flexing for the camera like he was auditioning to be the villain in a GNC commercial. I logged in under an alias and dropped one comment in the live chat. "How's Bali, Trey? You kiss all your clients' wives with that mouth." The screen flickered. He stuttered mid-sentence. Someone else jumped in. "Wait, what's this about Bali?" Another chimed in. "Yo, did you cheat with someone's wife?" Eyes. Trey laughed it off. Or tried to. "Just some internet troll," he said, forcing a smile. "Jealous guys with too much time." "Oh, buddy, that was your final free pass." Because the next morning, he got served. Official documents. A cease and desist letter from my attorney for harassment and defamation, paired with a potential small claims suit for trespassing on private property, thanks to the cozy nights he spent in my apartment while I was traveling. But I didn't stop there. I sent his ex-girlfriend, yes, the one he forgot to mention to Lena, a polite message. "Hey, not sure if you knew this, but your ex has been spending time with my wife. Just thought you'd appreciate the heads up, since your name's still on his old lease and that might impact your credit. Best, Logan." And the cherry on top? I had a billboard put up 2 blocks from his usual gym. Nothing dramatic. No names. Just big, black letters on a clean white background. Cheaters train harder. Especially when they're running from the truth. I timed it for the week his new promo was launching. Miles made sure it hit local social media within hours. By Thursday, Trey's client list had thinned. His influencer deals? Paused. And Lena? She texted me. "Did you do something to Trey? He's freaking out." I replied with 2 words. "Karma compound." She didn't respond. Guess the reception's bad when you're standing in the ruins of your own bad choices. But the real victory wasn't the spectacle. It was the silence. That night, I sat on my couch, my real couch, in my new place. No ghost of her perfume. No sound of someone else's lies bouncing off the walls. Just peace. I sipped a beer and watched Trey's YouTube subscriber count drop in real time. And I smiled. Not because I ruined him, but because I didn't have to lift a finger to make him collapse. All I did was hand him a mirror. And let the truth do the heavy lifting. They always come back. Maybe not because they miss you. Maybe not because they love you. But because they can't stand not being liked. Not being forgiven. Lena knocked on my door 2 weeks after her entire fantasy had come apart like dollar store glue in a rainstorm. She wore a gray hoodie. No makeup. Hair tied back like she'd just come from yoga or the realization that she'd destroyed her own life. "Logan," she said. "Can we talk?" I let her stand there a while. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I wanted her to feel what distance really looked like. Eventually, I opened the door. She stepped inside like a ghost. Looked around like she was walking through the wreckage of a fire she started but swore was an accident. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said. "I know," I replied. "You meant for it to happen in secret. Quiet. Without consequences. I made a mistake." "No. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. You made a choice, over and over." She started crying. Soft, strategic tears. The kind that used to move me. Now they just felt like part of the routine. Cue the waterworks. Cue the speech about being confused, about how she felt seen by someone else. Trey sought her. Sure. That's because she took off her ring and her morals. Then came the closer. I don't want to lose you forever." I nodded slowly. "Lena, I want you to think about something." "What?" "If I had done everything you did, every lie, every touch, every secret, and then showed up at your door, would you have forgiven me? She didn't answer, which is how I knew the answer. After that day, we didn't speak again. Not really. There were emails from her lawyer. Logistics. Apartment division. Asset separation. Nothing intimate. Nothing warm. Just ice and ink and legally acceptable heartbreak. But here's the part people don't talk about. Letting go doesn't happen all at once. It's not a dramatic scene with yelling and doors slamming. It's quieter. Sadder, in a way. It's deleting a photo. Hearing a song and not wincing. It's forgetting what her laugh sounded like when it was meant for you. I didn't move on overnight, but I did move forward. I joined a boxing gym. Not for revenge body. Not for rage. For rhythm. For release. I started cooking again, badly, at first. Burned more rice than I'd care to admit. But I smiled through it. And one day, I looked around my new apartment, smaller, simpler, and realized something. It felt like mine. No lies tucked in drawers. No ghost perfume in the sheets. Just me. Breathing. Living. Free. I heard about Trey 6 months later. Lost his client base. Got evicted. Tried to start a digital coaching program and ended up getting roasted online when someone leaked his client DMs. Apparently, Lena stuck around a while. Tried to make it work. But two broken people don't build anything. They just lean on each other until something gives. She left him. Again. Classic. Word got around she was staying with her sister. Looking for jobs. Starting therapy. Good for her, I guess. Growth is growth. But I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. What I felt was stillness. There was no joy in watching them crash. Just peace in knowing it wasn't my wreckage anymore. They tried to build a fire out of lies. The flames were beautiful, for a moment. But fire doesn't care who's dancing around it. Eventually, it burns everything. It's been a year now. I don't tell this story to be bitter. I tell it because sometimes, people ask me how I stayed so calm. So put together. Truth is, I didn't. I just redirected. See, revenge doesn't always look like screaming in a parking lot. It doesn't always end with slashed tires and broken dishes. Sometimes, revenge is quiet. It's clean. It's her unlocking a door that no longer opens. It's him checking his phone and watching his last subscriber vanish. It's silence, deliberate, composed, unbothered silence. Because nothing is more terrifying to someone who thrives on chaos than being ignored by the person who used to care. So no, I didn't destroy them. They did that just fine on their own. I just watched from a distance and made sure the camera was rolling.